And so in terms of data-driven journalism, how is that impacting how stories are crafted? How has it changed from when you were working in the producing end of news?
Well, when I was working in the producing end of news, we were on DOS, and so, and I think that journalists and newsrooms still have have a proclivity to be analog driven. I mean, I think we still have this sense that, we want to get very close to the people and close to the objects. And what I see in new journalism now is a new breed of journalists that are more, they may even be computer science trained. I personally was not trained as a computer scientist. And journalists were sort of, in the 90s, more technological because we could edit tape or we could edit radio. And then something changed. Media went on, the Googles went on, the Yahoos went on, and developed, BuzzFeeds went on and developed sites that, YouTube, that sort of, in many ways, have eclipsed the more traditional journalistic sites. So now I think that journalists are really thinking hard about how we combine the two skill sets, which are more computer sciencey skill sets and journalistic skill sets, and it's producing a new breed of journalist who can do some level of, well, in software we would call it business analysis, or even programming, and looking at the data that might come out of government, or the data that might come out of sort of any publicly accessible database, and really have the skills to ask the questions, the statistical analysis skills and also the data crunching skills to be able to generate stories from the data. So it looks different. It looks like journalists going to the actual data sets and saying, wow, now we have the computing power to crunch the data that's coming out of government. We're not depending on another entity or another agency to ask those questions. We can crunch the data and then go back to the sources. So it's producing really interesting new stuff. The question, though, in journalism is always, how is this endeavor going to get paid for moving forward? So big data or data-driven journalism is more expensive even than old-style journalism, or as expensive, let's say. So.
And now we also find that more often than not, data is the story, and the story is the data. So it's the old age question that has been portrayed in media, that has been asked in editorial rooms all along. How much does it matter that a story drives its own data, be it the audience, be it impacting policy, be it selling papers? I mean, many years ago, there used to be a very interesting show on television called Max Headroom, and there was a very famous quote in that television show when the reporter was so upset because he was doing a news story and the editor was cutting it, and he turns around and says, well, since when has news been about advertising and money? And the guy just looked at him perplexed and said, always? So now, in the age of big data, this question is even more prominent. Because now we have immediate data about how the media, which is the story, is behaving. So we are seeing cases where stories that may perhaps be socially relevant are being cut simply because the data doesn't support this story to be aired, and that is a very important debate to have in journalism and in society.
So it sounds to me that with all this data at the fingertips of journalists, that actually there's a greater need for market research, to somebody to look at data and either craft an objective view of it or tailor it in a certain way that tells the story.
Well,
which is a slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a long time, so right now, because computing power is vast and cheap, we're getting these phrases like big data. But the truth is that for 10 or 15 years, there has been more data than people then can consume. We have been in a data fog and a data cloud, and just truckloads of data being dumped on people for a very long time. Now we have the computing power to be able to crunch it, but people have been underwater with data for a very long time. Just look at web analytics and look at the analytics that you get if you even just run Google AdWords. So yes, in order to do anything with the data, we're overwhelmed with data. In order to do anything with the data, we need good data minds and good market research and good questions being asked to say, what do we want to do with the data, and does having this data make anything actionable? So, for example, a soapbox that I often get on is that advertisers, most brand advertisers, don't really have the capacity, most of them don't have the capacity and the internal know-how to deal with all the behavioral metrics that are out there right now. So exactly what are we going to do with these big data sets once we get more behavioral data in and more crunching of the data? The IAB units and all of that kind of stuff have helped control the playing field, but still advertisers are overwhelmed with what they can do on the internet, and how exactly are they going to do a customized BuzzFeed ad campaign and a customized Facebook page, and all of the big data and behavioral data doesn't help with the actual execution. So from an advertising perspective, we need the tools to help or the tools or the staff or the infrastructure to help advertisers deal with what they need to do. The data is overwhelming, and they need the expertise to be able to craft that into then feeding into the programs that they need to be able to run.
In addition, there is this fantasy that big data is the truth. The truth lies in big data. Unfortunately, and perhaps it is the physicist that speaks in me, big data lies. Statistics lie. Any kind of data set, when you apply statistics to it, you can manipulate the analysis and you can manipulate the data frequently by your own bias of your question to have it come out any which way you want. Therefore, your point about requiring expert market analysis and objective market analysis and true studied questions is critical, because otherwise we will have a sea of data, and any monkey can look at this data and say, oh look, it's clearly Shakespeare. And everybody else will say, no, there's no question, I am looking at Homer. So unless there is the right analytics, the right skill sets applied to this kind of data and the right technologies, we're going to get nowhere with it. We're going to continue to drown, like Anna said, in a sea of data and stay perpetually in a fog of it.